What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Today I'm joined by Travis Fowler. Travis is a pretty well-known collector in the Twitter and Facebook groups if you're in those. But recently, Travis reached out to me to share a story of a Grail card that he finally got. And I said, hey, this is a fantastic story. I think it will help other collectors. Let's record it for this channel. I think it's an amazing story and a great testament to working hard, setting goals, reaching out to the community members, being engaging with the community, asking questions when you need some help. There's just a lot of things that can be taken away from this conversation for you, the collectors. We often hear people say, I want this Grail card, or that's my Grail. No matter what that is, it could be a base card, it could be just a base PSA 10, it could be a paper rookie card, it could be a one of one. The definition of a Grail could be different to each and every person. But how do you get those Grails? I often see people complain, oh, I don't have the money to be able to afford that. Or maybe it's a card that you want and it's a one of one, or, there's only 5 of them, and it truly is a problem of you cannot find the card. The availability is essentially non-existent. So how do you get that Grail? Travis walks us through some different ways, and we discuss different aspects of obtaining Grail cards, how you go about it, mindset. There's also some great tidbits just about general collecting and some general fun wrestling stories sprinkled throughout this conversation. Travis definitely offers up some fun and entertaining insight within how he does the hobby, and once again, how he was able to obtain his Grail card. But before we jump into that conversation, just a quick reminder, if you, the wrestling card enthusiasts, the hardcore collectors, if you want to be a part of a project that could shape kind of making history of wrestling cards that I'm working on, make sure to check out the links in the show notes to the Wrestling with Card podcast, or you can just search Wrestling with Cards on any popular podcast platform. Check out the episode called I Need Your Help with Iconic Wrestling Cards. And it is just what it says. I need your help. I need your opinion. This is your opportunity, if you've ever collected wrestling cards before, to have your voice and your opinions heard to help shape some iconic lists of wrestling cards. For all the instructions, for the sake of time, I'm not going to talk about it here. Make sure to check out that podcast. All the instructions, it's a really short episode, are right there. Check it out. Let me know what you think. But let's go ahead and get into this conversation with Travis Fowler. What's up, everybody? We've got Travis Fowler on the show, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see you floating around on a lot of hobby content stuff. So I'm really happy to give you a platform here to talk about it. I know we've conversed a lot in the Facebook groups, and we've seen you on social media, but I just like to give people a chance to come on here and actually just tell their story. So thanks for coming on. Happy to have you.
Hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, a loner, a drifter, I don't know. I just like to, I'll see stuff on Twitter, Facebook groups, and just I like to conversate and talk about wrestling cards, comics, you name it. So
that's what it's all about. I mean, we're already getting off topic here, but I think that if you go back, 5-6 years when I kind of started getting back into this, I would have never thought that I'd be connecting with people like I am through these groups. And it all started with pieces of cardboard. It's strange.
It is. And the one thing that I never thought that, like I said, you and I have talked, but we all have, there's a story to this. And I don't think you know this, but so I found out about you through the Card Foundation podcast, but I found out about you really through the major group because Zach Ryder or Cardona bought the Wrestling All-Stars set, was upset on the condition it was in. He put it on eBay, and then I later found out that you were the one that bought it. And it's just it's just a small world on how that is. And it's I remember them buying it. I remember him talking about it. And then, a few months later, when I started going through your backlog, because that's what all, collectors do. You watch the most recent, you're like, well, I need to indulge all of this. So you go back and you watch and you listen, and it's oh, wait. So it's crazy on how niche collecting is, but how, it's like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, essentially.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So, yeah, and to talk about the All-Stars, I don't want to spoil it because I'm going to do a whole video on this, and I'm sure going to get some heat on. But actually, with this being WrestleMania weekend, the time we're recording this, I actually have a card through Marcus Percal from the group. He's helping me get Cardona to sign a I'll just leave it at that. Cardona's
Okay.
signing a card for me. Everybody else is going to have to wait because I'm going to get a lot of backlash for it, I'm sure. But I'll have a whole video explaining why, and
Awesome.
it's going to do what you just said. It's going to like tie in like Cardona and the group and just the set that I have and everything together. So let's go back now that we've already got off topic here. And
sorry.
no, it's my fault actually. I brought it up, which is that's what this is all about, having these conversations. So go back to your origin story because it's not something that I know a lot of your history about, and I think other people always want to know. So where did you get started just collecting in general, no matter what that is?
So as of time of recording, I will be 42 on Saturday. I'm an April Fool's baby.
Wow.
So
well, happy
born
birthday
in 80,
early.
Yeah, thank you. So being an early 80s baby, I grew up but this is slightly before Nintendo and Atari, like before it became, the popular thing. And when you were a kid, you collected baseball cards and comic books. And it started there. My dad helped open a local card shop. And I remember him bringing home cases and cases of like 85 tops, 86 tops, Donruss. And back in the day, they would, this before factory sets, like people wanted the sets at Christmas, and other than, just opening the wax. So I remember, my dad bringing home cards and him sitting at the table and opening the cards. And that was cool for me because I got to open the packs. This is before grading and anything like that. So it was just, helping him open packs, helping him, sort, which then turned into me collecting in the late 80s. So that is your Bash Brothers, your Barry Bonds, 89, big year for Greg Jeffries, not some guy named King Griffey Jr. Like who's heard of that guy? So it was just a natural progression of my dad introducing it to me, and then getting a pack here, getting a pack there, getting a rack pack. Those were a big thing. And just enjoying it. So it got me to collect, and then, you have your boxes, and then you get your binders and your pages, and it's just been a natural progression and just fun. So I tend to say like I'm a Bob Ross, like I paint a picture. So if I do go too off topic, you can.
Oh, it's all good.
Rein me in.
But... All right. So we're going to put a pin in the collecting, and then let's find out how you actually got into wrestling.
The first wrestling cards that I saw were, my dad bought one pack of 85 tops WWF. And I remember seeing he had the Hulk Hogan. Now, I don't remember if it was the yellow or the blue, but it had Hulk on it. And also in that had the Hogan and Antonio Inoki. And my first thought was, why does Hulk Hogan look weird? And that is not the Winged Eagle belt.
Right.
Like, it was just weird. And then I'm like, well, who's this guy putting Hulk Hogan in an abdominal stretch? That's not Earthquake. That's not Dino Brock. Like, so those were my first wrestling cards that I saw. But the first set that I really remember being like, oh my gosh, I have to have these, were the classics, the white border ones with
1990.
Yeah, the 89, 90, whatever, the classics. And those were so cool to me because you had some action shots, you had studio shots, you had those awesome icons or logos that were always in the back of their promo.
Love those things.
Of the card. Like, and it was Big Boss Man, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Ultimate Warrior, like everybody I was watching on TV, Mr. Perfect. Like they were simple, but they were just so awesome. And then I remember, talking to mom and dad, like, we've got to find these. So, and my card shop didn't have them. I think we found them at a Toys R Us, but we didn't find the packs. We found didn't it come in the factory set box? Wasn't there like a factory set? I think.
Yes.
Like, so we found that.
I think
so
both the 90 and 91 classics, and then they had that classic WrestleMania set also. All of those came in full sets.
Yeah, so I got the little box, and then I was like, well, I've got to find the binder, because you see the binder as a kid, and it's like, I never got that until, I was in my 30s when, eBay was a big thing, but that was my like introduction to wrestling cards. And so it was the classics. And then shortly after that, my KB that I worked next to they started liquidating the WCW cards, the
The
Impel.
Impels, okay.
Yeah. I think Tony might have sent them up way back when. So, but I remember I had a paper route and going into Toys or KB Toys, and I would get an action figure. Another thing I would get is classics, great illustrated classics. I don't know if anybody remembers those. Like, they were big hardbound books of classics, but they were like a comic book, and it was they were really cool. I loved them. But in that book section were boxes of cards, and I saw the WCW Impel, and it was like $5 a box. I'm like, sign me up. So I bought 4 boxes for $20. My brother bought 4 because I had that mentality. I had the baseball card mentality of there's going to be 752 cards in this set, because that was like the average number on baseball. So bought 4 boxes because I needed 4 boxes to get a whole set of 752 cards. And little did I know I would have about 12 sets of Impel WCW.
So as you're going down your collecting journey from then until now, like, what has the intersect been like between the actual collecting and then wrestling, whether it's cards, figures, other, maybe it's memorabilia, ring worn stuff? Like, where has that kind of intersect for you as you've kind of gone along this hobby journey?
I have always watched wrestling. Some of my earliest memories is my dad always watching primetime wrestling. And I remember watching that. I also remember Georgia Championship / Crockett. Like,
that's
just
a throwback.
Like, I'm in Ohio, so we got like NWA and Crockett from Carolina. We got obviously the stuff from New York. So I just remember seeing it. And then, I turned into, Saturday morning is Superstars and Challenge. Yep. And then, Sunday was All-American Wrestling, I think it was, or
I think at one point, I just always remember Sundays having later on into the 90s, they always had Superstars on the 90s. But yeah, I want to say it was like All-American or something like that.
Well, where Mean Gene was in the Control Center on Sunday. And then Monday was always prime time. Then it turned into Raw. And that got me through like junior high, high school. And I was a big figure collector. And it was hard to find cards because there was that lull after Classic until Comic Images. Yeah. So like, it was just a dry spot. So you did what any collector, there's an action figure, there's a magazine, and I started collecting it. Then I got out of it. Other than comics, I got out of cards right around 2003, 2004. Because I just something had to go. I was doing video games, comics, cards, like it just, something had to go. Wrestling, cards quit, but I would still go to live events. Once again, being in Ohio, I saw a lot of ECW. I went to both Heat Waves, 98 and 99, went to a handful of ECW house shows, went to the second Sold Out, King of the Ring 1998, and the Raw the night after at Gund Arena in Cleveland. And so I can officially say I saw all of Kane's first title run live. Like, there's not very many people can say they've seen an entire championship but it's always been there. So I would travel once I got into my 20s, and then we'll fast forward to COVID, and the major wrestling figure guys were talking about cards that brought it up, and I always saw them, but I never was like, I just can't. That's a slippery slope. I'm just going to keep moving. And then COVID hit, and I was like, wow, Topps is actually producing like a quality product, and dipped my toes a little bit, and then just it fell right back in again. with all their releases with Finest and Chrome.
Just like you said, it was this easy, slippery slope to get into.
Yeah. Well, and then it was completely different from the last time that I had collected, because in the early 2000s and late 90s, there weren't any of the parallels that you had a base set, you had an insert set of 9 to 15 cards, and you could, you were done. There were no of 25s, of 50, of 100, or, none of that. So it was just a whole new world. I sound like Aladdin, but it literally was just something like, holy cow. Okay, let's get into this. And I got back into it, and I've been with it, ever since about 3.5 years now, back into the card hobby.
I want to backtrack on a couple of statements you said.
Okay.
You mentioned how you were finding figures, you were finding magazines, video games, but you couldn't find cards. Do you think that to this day, do you think that's something that has kind of set the wrestling cards as a segment of the hobby? Do you think that's something that's kind of set it back compared to all of the other Pokemon, baseball, basketball, football, because it's just not as available? Where you can go to Walmart and you can pick up Elites, you can pick up, you go to the book section and pick up WWE books or magazines occasionally, but cards are still to this day not always there. So do you think that's maybe something that's set it back a little bit?
100%, because going back and seeing that, Heritage was Walmart, and Walmart had exclusive blasters, and Target had this, and here are the tins with, your Topps T209 reprints. And it's like, I don't ever remember seeing that. And I'm an observant person. Like, the card section wasn't big, but I always would look, because like that, it's in my blood. Like, I guess I grew up in baseball cards and comics. So even though I wasn't buying, it's like, well, what's Topps putting out? What's Fleer putting out? What's Donruss putting out? And I look, but I never saw anything wrestling. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, if they got it, it was one, maybe two boxes. It may have got pushed to the side. I don't think there were any heavy collectors, but I think it was like, oh, well, this got thrown and knocked over, and 2 packs went this way, and this got thrown out, and it just got liquidated out because there wasn't a lot. But I know the comic stores, because we have like 6 comic stores around us. It's great, but it's also a lot. And I never ever saw anything like Heritage, women's division, Chrome, any of that stuff from Topps.
Yeah, and think about, I remember seeing the Steve Austin bone crunching action figure when he would battle McMahon. You remember they ran that commercial. They would run their video game commercials, but it wasn't until, they did maybe once or twice, but it wasn't until Panini took over that I remember seeing, hey, there's trading cards on a Monday Night Raw. Like, here's the advertisement. So I think, we're still kind of in the infancy of wrestling cards because of just that lack of education and lack of distribution that has come up. The other thing I wanted to touch on, you talk about ECW, so I got to get this in. Heatwave 98, I believe it was the Hera Arena. Is that correct?
Dayton Hera Arena. Yes, sir.
Have you seen the video on YouTube where somebody went in after it's abandoned and they tore it?
Yes.
Isn't that like, I was watching that and I was thinking, because like Heatwave 98 was one of the first early pay-per-views that I ordered with my own money that I worked for. And I was watching them tour that arena, and it was just bringing back those memories of watching that pay-per-view, and was like, man, the history that this building has, because people look back at Heatwave 98 as one of the like best ECW pay-per-views of all time. And you were there. So anything you want to share about the arena, the event, anything like that?
So Heatwave 98 was crazy. It is not, at the time, it still wasn't the best part of town. It was in Dayton, but it was in, like I said, not the worst, but it wasn't the best. But I think that's why that ECW was able to get there, because it wasn't like Nutter Center over by Wright State, or since one of the bigger, it was a smaller venue. I'm guessing the revenue was low, but it was amazing. Like, I went in, I'd watched ECW at that point for about 1.5 to 2 years. I'd always heard about it, saw it in the magazines, but when like, we're coming to Dayton, I was like, well, I'm there. So I watched it, and one of the cool things for me is also around that time is when I found out about Fire Pro Wrestling.
Oh yeah.
And that, or Fire Pro G, Because I always saw these little infancy of the internet memes of like these little cartoon wrestlers doing these crazy moves. And it was like, oh, this is 6-man scramble. So what do? You go to web crawler, because this is before Google, kids, or you ask Jeeves, either one.
Oh,
And
there's a throwback. Yeah.
you find out 6-man scramble, and they're like, there's a new wrestling game called Fire Pro G. And so I learned about the Japanese wrestling guys, and Shinsuke, not Shinsuke Nakamura,
Hayabusa.
yeah,
Hakushi?
Hayabusa was there, and
Shinzaki, isn't it?
Shinzaki, yeah, Hakushi. That's my Rob Van Dam impersonation.
Right.
I got to see Hayabusa. It was also the first time seeing Taz and Dreamer and all of these guys, and it was great. Like, I remember being there, and it was a second match of the night, and Sunny Tammy Sitch walks out with Candido, and she was just on Raw,
Right.
2 weeks prior, hocking a shirt up and down the aisle. But some of my favorite memories, the matches were great. Obviously, Taz fell through with Bam Bam, fell through the aisleway. I thought Taz legitimately killed himself, because when he suplexed him off of the ramp into the crowd, if you watch, Taz hit his head on the guardrail because it was raised above. That was crazy. But less than 10 miles away from Hare Arena was the Ramada that they all stayed in, because they had a meet and greet the day before. So we all knew the hotel that they were staying at. And there was about a dozen of us that would stand in the lobby, and we would meet the wrestlers as they came in. So like I met Chris and Tammy. I met Lance Storm. I was 17. Yeah, I wasn't 18 yet. But there was a little hotel bar in there called Gambit's Grill. And I met Joey Styles at like 2 a.m. at the hotel bar as a 17-year-old. But my coolest memory, and I mostly get a retweet from Taz about this, because Taz came up, and I'm 17. Taz is shorter than me, but he's Taz. Like, you've got to remember, this is 98, and Taz is like the man. Yeah. And nobody went up to Taz. He had a big bandage over his eye. Like, nobody went up to Taz. And we're standing there in the lobby, and I'm like, this might be the only time I ever get to meet Taz. So I go over, and he hits the bell, or hits the up arrow on the elevator. I go, excuse me, Taz. And he just turns around and just looks at me. And I go, I'm a big fan. Thanks for coming to Dayton. You were awesome. You want a picture, brother? Please. So I have this picture with Taz. But while we are taking the picture, the elevator closes, and his luggage goes up without him.
Gosh.
And he took a picture with me. So I have this picture of Taz and I from the night after of Heatwave 98. And I just remember the picture being done and seeing the doors close, and it's going up, and I go, if he wasn't going to kill me before for being a 17-year-old Mark, he is going to kill me now, because his roller bag is on some other random floor at the Ramada.
Right.
So,
wow. I didn't think I was going to get
awesome. that. I'll send you a picture of that too, so you can see. But it was amazing. I will never ever forget the night that I met Taz.
I didn't think we were going to get a story like that, and that's one thing I wanted to touch on when I have this fascination with these abandoned arenas that they go to, because there's so much. I
may or may not have went there. I won't say, because it was you weren't allowed. It was off limits, and it was a disaster area. But I may or may not have a couple seats from Hare Arena in my house. So I don't know, hypothetically, allegedly.
I just think there's so much history to be told there. Like when a couple years ago when WrestleMania was in Dallas, you started seeing people going to where the Sportatorium was and just kind of walking around in that field. Like, there's nothing there but a grass field, but there's so much history that took place there. And I just think the more of that kind of stuff, the more stories you can tell like that. I mean, you're in Dayton, Ohio, and Hayabusa's there. I mean, that's just something that a lot of people would now take for granted because
Right.
you have people flying in for WrestleMania weekends and, people flying in on these indie shows. But back then, it just wasn't the case.
And if you think about it, how did Paulie afford bringing in Hayabusa to Dayton? He was bouncing checks to his regular employees, let alone
Right.
flying somebody in from Japan. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Nope. That was part of that whole attitude era of the late 90s, early 2000s is there was so much stuff that happened and it just didn't make sense. And we loved every second of it. So moving on, like getting back into the collectible side of this, and it could tie in with what we just talked about. So as you've gotten into all of these different realms of collectibles, what would you say your current interests are? Like, what are you super collecting anything? Are you set collecting? Are you going after a segment of figures? Like, what is it that you're currently collecting, and any thoughts about the process of that?
A little spoiler, but I was a Sasha Banks super collector. I don't even want to say super collector because I don't want to say I'm from the old school because I'm not trying to give myself a title, but kind of like what we talked about. Like I've set out to collect every base card of Sasha Banks. I didn't need every parallel. I wasn't chasing a rainbow, but to me, I was like, if I can get the basic chrome and a couple or not chrome, pardon me, chrome or prism, and a couple refractors that I like, I'm cool. But
Sure.
To me, a color, it's the same card, but just a different color. And I'm not taking that away from anyone that collects the rainbow, but that's just my mentality of how I was programmed as a collector. And I would grab some of the rarer Sasha Banks things. But now I still have a love and an affinity towards Japanese wrestling. So you can kind of see like right there's Julia from when she won the 5-star. I got introduced to Stardom from my friend John Thurman. He's one of the Oscar collectors that if you see on Twitter and through the groups, he found out about Stardom, introduced it to me, and then also with that, like opened up BBM and Ibushi Road.
Yep.
So like I've started dabbling in that because I can't get that here. Like there are no, you barely can get Topps Chrome and Prism, let alone packs of.
We just talked about the unavailability of things.
Yeah, of BBM. So I've fallen down that rabbit hole. But I also do something that you'll appreciate because you and I have had these conversations. I collect what's fun. And so with these refractors, like last year on the Dusty Rhodes Revolution card, was it the Cosmic? What was the one with the polka dots? Because you talked about it. And,
White Sparkle?
In Revolution.
Oh, Revolution.
Where it looked like the polka dots, but it wasn't the Galactic, but was it Cosmic?
Yeah, no, I can't remember. I know what you're talking about though, because there were several people that pointed that out.
It was like a Dusty Rhodes polka dot variant or color match, if you will. One of the more recent ones I got, the new Lacey Evans that was in Optic and Chronicles had a red, white, and blue, and she's doing her salute in her Marine. So I was
Perfect.
Like, how cool is that? Like, and it's just fun. Like, never thought I'd see a Mega Powers card or green Shotsies or just other random fun cards. Like, because this will get to the main event, but Sasha hadn't had a card since Select. So I'm seeing all of this fun stuff, but she doesn't have a card, so I don't have anything to set out to buy. So I'm looking for fun stuff. Like, oh, look at that. That's a cool Hogan card, or that's a cool Macho Man, like the images and then, the color stuff. But I've had a great time with the BBM and the Stardom stuff as well, because that brings up a whole different level of collecting of the cards, but they have checkies and, they're either real hit or miss. And some people say that they're cool. Some people are like, why are you on a Polaroid in front of a white painted wall? But like, I think it's cool that they're out of 10. So that's
different too.
Yeah. It's like a Prism Gold. And then they all have an individualized autograph, and the same thing with their autograph cards. Some of these are works of art compared to what I'm used to seeing when I was a Sasha collector, $ line, B line. And I get something that's got like artwork and an inscription, and to me it's cool, and it's just something different. And I've got out of figure collecting for the most part. I'll get, one here or there.
Sure.
There's a Mr. America figure. Like, how could I not want a Mr. America? But for the most part, I'm collecting to have fun. And, I get ideas, from your thing. I never put together that the poor man's gold was orange for Dusty Rhodes. I was like, got to do that. Like,
Common
because
man, yeah.
it just makes sense. And
Yeah.
like, why would I want not have that? Like, same thing with Cody right now. He's got a red, white, and blue, and I think Optic, like,
It
and
looks awesome too.
it's all affordable. I'm not dropping thousands and thousands. And it's just, when I look at it, it makes me smile and it makes me happy. I'm very simple when it comes to that sort of collecting.
That's what I did with Prism. Like, I don't mean to like reopen that band-aid, but when Prism came out and the box prices are ridiculous and people are saying it's a pump and dump, I was like, I'll go buy this red, white, and blue Prism Hogan for $7. I'll go buy this Solo Sikoa rookie card Bloodline Parallel Red for
Right.
$8. That I'll buy the Dusty, Common Man Gold, which was, I don't remember what I paid, but it was like under $50. So all these people out here complaining about this stuff, like that's exactly what I was doing, was picking something here or there that maybe it wasn't like something I was going to go all in on, but it was like, that's a cool card. I would like to have that for this purpose. So yeah.
Find your joy. And really that's what collecting should be. Like, hey, I grew up before there were pull lists at comic stores. You went in, you looked at everything on there, and like, that's a cool cover, that's a cool cover. Oh, look at those like,
yep. And that's how I used to buy music too. Like, there was no previewing it. It was like, what's the cover art look like?
Exactly. I'm just a big kid. And when I look at, I'll spend an evening on eBay and just scrolling to see, oh, well, that wasn't on the product sheet. Oh, that's a cool image. What color variants are, like, what are the parallels? And then it's a rabbit hole.
So a couple different things we can kind of touch on as you've kind of opened this up. What are you doing with Sasha? Did you sell all that stuff? Did you keep some of it? Like, what is the mental process? Because that's another important thing that I've talked about. I think that sometimes the collectors who become known as the base set collector, the super collector, the massive, like, I'm just the AEW guy. No matter what you are, sometimes you decide, hey, I want to change lanes. And then sometimes I think that you're looked down upon for doing that. So what has your process been mentally, and what have you done with the Sasha collection up to this point now?
So other than about 4 cards, I got rid of all of my Sashas for a big card. And we'll talk about that. But once again, it's all about timing. So with that, Sasha, I'd been debating it because it's like, man, I want to collect something. Wrestle Kingdom came around. She debuted. She went through the roof again, and I was real close after Wrestle Kingdom. I was like, I should do this, but like, for what? Like, I've got nothing. I'm not looking for anything. Like, I wouldn't be gaining anything but money, and I'm not in it for the money. But there wasn't anything that I could level up or put that to, like,
right,
because I bought all of my Sashas raw and graded them. So like, I did the game. Like, I would find a good one, I would grade it, come back 9 or 10, and like I did all of that. So I put a lot of work into that for about 3 years. And then with that timing, shout out to David Peck. He posts a video on Twitter of, hey, this is how you can sell what a real Wrestling All-Star card look like. So like any content, I watch it. I go, well, let me start looking at this stuff. Well, that's right around the time that Sasha's about to win the IWGP Championship within a day or two. And then I start looking on eBay and see a couple Wrestling All-Star Hulk Hogan's pop up that are not graded. And it's just like, it's now or never. Yeah. Like, the signs are there. Like, I never got bored with Sasha, but I don't ever know if she's coming back. Mm-hmm. Like, so I've got nothing new to collect because I don't go and try to get all the variants. And being a collector, you always hear about these grails. When I was younger, it was that the Mickey Mantle Bowman, the small one, was the rookie, but then it was the new Tops is now the Mickey Mantle to have. I collect Amazing Spider-Man. I will never have 7 figures to buy a great copy of Amazing Fantasy 15. So like I've never been able to have a grail because it's always just been unattainable. And then when I see this, Sasha's on the rise, and she's been so roller coaster the past 3 years with leaving, coming back, leaving, coming back. And I saw David's video. I saw an eBay auction or two, and I just went, it's time. Like, I know what I want to do. And liquidated all of Sasha, spent the afternoon. You understand eBay auctions, like, went through, put all the auctions in, and then I went and took all the pictures to make sure and listed all of the PSA grades and the item numbers. And I was going for to get that grail that I wanted, a Wrestling All-Stars Hulk Hogan Raw, because I've got a better chance of getting it Raw than, I would rather buy it Raw and grade it myself than to buy graded, because I'm not going to spend a graded price for the Wrestling All-Stars that is just gone through the roof the past 3 to 5 years.
All right, so we're going to put a quick pin in this grail chasing because we'll tell the story about that. I want to go back to something else you touched on. You've actually touched on it a couple times now, and that's base cards. This is something that I did not frown upon it at all whatsoever. Just like, there's a lot of people out there who say base cards are trash. We've heard it. If you ever watch a break, somebody just flies through the base cards. They don't care, but then they'll pull out the parallel, the autograph, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So you're not the only person who finds value in base cards, but yet in our current hobby state, they're looked at as throwaways. What are your opinion on base cards? Are they still relevant? Do you still think there's going to be a future even with overprinting? Like, what is your kind of relationship with that? Because I've noticed from selling on eBay that, somebody will come in and they'll place like a 50 to 60 card order in my store, and I'll look at it. It's all base cards. Now, it's a variety of types of things, but it's all base cards. And I just like to get, you're the first person that I've talked to that's been like a player collector, super collector, but you were only going after just their base cards, which is very interesting. So I'd love to get your take on that.
Base cards to me are the foundation. And what I mean by that is, like, when I collected the 87 Tops Jose Canseco was the 87 Tops Jose Canseco. We didn't get a gold. We didn't get a non-wood finish. We didn't get a golden Tops rookie cup. Same thing with like an 89 Upper Deck Griffey Jr. Like, to me, that is the base. I'm also a comic collector. So it's the same thing. You have your standard regular cover that they make thousands of, and then you can get a variant, whether that's a 50-50 or a 1 in 10, or, like, that is the card. And all of these extras, the parallels, the refractors, the number cards, they're amazing. But you got to have a base and you got to have a foundation, or you don't have the other refractors. And they are affordable. You can get a base card for $1 or $2, $10 max. Like, granted, some of these are, like a rookie card or a first or second year card. You'll spend a little bit more, but they're always there. And that is the card. And like I said, I don't know if it's just my age and, you only collected base cards.
Right.
Your inserts were a completely different card until Topps started doing like Topps Gold, where they put the gold foil on it. But other than that, if you got an all-star card, it was a completely different card. So I think it's great. And when you're collecting, it's the Pokemon attitude to a point. Like, you got to have them all, got to catch them all. But, like, to me, the base is the base. And it's the most important card. I'm not saying the most valuable, because obviously an out of 10 and a 1 of 1 supersedes anything that dollar base card is going to do. But all of those are variations or refractors of a base, and that's what they wanted you to collect. And I think it's great. Like it's just easy, it's fun, and hey, I need 6 cards, and just like you said, you buy 5 or 6 at a time. You've knocked a bunch of cards out just for base cards.
Right. Would you say that, in my opinion, I'll just get your opinion on it too. Like, I think that people they don't want them now because 2 reasons. One, value, obviously. Like, it's such a monetary driven hobby that we're in now, which, good or bad, I don't know. There's arguments on both sides. But the other thing is that we're in this kind of era now where people want what others can't have. And that's really, I think, the more kind of that narrative gets put out there, the more that people latch onto that, and they're like, well, I want the highest grade that nobody else has. I want to be one of the elite people that has one of the copies of the golds. What do you think? Do you think that's why that we've kind of seen that shift in the last few years?
Absolutely. It's I don't want to say, I think you and Tony had talked about like what is rarity compared to manufactured rarity.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me when you guys talked about that, because like an out of 10 card is out of 10. But then recently we see these news articles of who was it? Somebody had like 1,700 one-of-one cards, but Brett Favre only had like, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's like, okay, if there are 1,000 one-of-one cards, are they? But it's also exactly like you said, look what I've got, because you don't have it, and it is a measuring contest for some people.
Well, and I've been one that said, and I've actually caught some backlash for this. I've said that if there's a limited number of cards out there and so many people have these things that are locked away in collections, like they think it's rare and they think it could be valuable, which sure it is. But down the road, I feel like sometimes people lose interest in that stuff because they can't find it. If they can't have it and they can't find it, they do what you do. They can't find something, they move on to something they can have and have fun with that, and then lose interest in the other stuff. And then from a value perspective, maybe it goes down, maybe it goes up, but I don't know. And that's just kind of something that goes on in my head. But I caught some backlash for that.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I don't know if I can say that. Darned if you do, darned if you don't. You can beat me there. Put my little green DX. We will not say damned between the hours of 9 and 10.
I'm sure we'll be fine with that. So let's go back to the Hogan thing now. So we've talked about this off air a little bit, or we've talked about it off air, but we've talked about it a little bit on right now. I've been a proponent of, if you see something you want, go after it. A Grail card, whether that's a Michael Jordan 86 Fleer, people want to bash that card because it's so mass produced. But if that's your goal, go for it. Right. You talk about the Hogan. I've had my own things that I've gone after, and I've had to like move a bunch of stuff or do like a 10-for-1 type trade to overpay to get something I need to get for my collection. I'm probably the only person that, number one, has superfractors in a binder, and number two, traded Macho Man autographs for Karrion Kross autographs because they're superfractors, and I had to have them. Like, nobody in their right mind is going to do that but me. So, but that's what you do when you spot that Grail. So as you have targeted this Hogan card, walk us through again, like, okay, so you're liquidating the Sasha. What else is going through your mind? What other processes are you doing? You talked about David Peck. He's a huge wealth of knowledge for the All-Stars. Yes. So wherever you want to go from that, just love to hear this whole story.
So like I said, it's all timing. I got I don't want to necessarily call it the boredom bug, but like Sasha didn't have anything from other than Select. So I had the ringside, the Mez, and the concourse or whatever, and a couple of, but nothing in Chronicles, which was sad. Nothing in Impeccable and all that. So like, and with her status, I don't see anything, possibly Panini in the foreseeable future. Will she come back once Fanatic / Topps? Man, it's hard to say. And this is before Leaf even said we're having Sasha Banks. So I have no idea how this is even possible.
Right.
Like, we haven't even, but like, I'm done, because like I said, I don't go back, and I'm not trying to complete any rainbows. And I got all the refractors that I wanted, the tie-dyes, the some color matches. I got everything, and there was not anything else that I on the foreseeable future. But I'm like, man, I've got a really good Sasha. I had her independent card. I did get that graded lucked out. I got that at a 9. Like, so there were like 2. Like, I had some really big pieces of her. And I just was like, okay, cool. But when you can't stoke the fire, it starts dwindling and going down. So, like I said, her popularity peaked again at Wrestle Kingdom, and I was really, really close. Like I said, I was like, I'm going to do it. But I'm like, I'm not doing this for the money. And so I stopped myself, and I even called John, and I don't want to say he talked me off the ledge, but he goes, "Who are you? What have you done with Travis? Because like you've done really good with your Sasha cards." And I just set it to the side. And like I said, David put out that video, and within 24 hours, it piqued my interest because he put out some great information. Measure this and check this, and like all of these things that I've wanted to know, but I just never did know. And so what did I do? I went to eBay, and then I'm like, I can't afford $10, $12, $8,000 for a graded card. Like it's just, I have a hard time spending that much money because it's like it could go to a lot of other things right now.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And I'm like, well, if I want to do this, how can I do this? And I'm like, I've got it in Sasha. And with nothing new coming on Sasha, and like I said, I bought everything Sasha raw at a decent price. I paid, for some of the stuff, I don't want to say I overpaid, but I always paid market price for Sasha. And she's up, down, up, down. And I would get it graded. I'd get some 9s. I'd get some 10s. Like I figured that out a little bit. And I was like, I saw a couple Hogans. And I went, I'm going to go for it. So then I reached out to David Peck again. And I said, hey, here are pictures of this Hogan. Thank you for the video. And I did thank him because it was a wealth of knowledge. But I said, can you help me out a little bit? Because, you talked about the somewhat arced edges and this and that. Like, so I really paid attention because I wanted to learn, but I got a master's class essentially from David Peck. And he said, this looks good. This ink block here looks good. Have him measure it and make sure that when he measures it, make sure that he gets a picture with the because of there's the big all-stars and then there's the smaller all-stars. And he said all of this looks good. And then the guy also had an Andre, and he said, Travis, like even before seeing this, I am 99% sure that this is real because his Andre is real. And why would he have a fake Hogan if the Andre is real?
Right.
Hey, that's why I'm talking to you, David, because like I'm learning. I'm sitting under your learning tree. And so once I found out it was real, that Saturday, before she won the IWGP title, I started loading them up on eBay, and I started all of the auctions roughly 2.5 hours before her possible win, because as you're aware, when somebody wins in wrestling, what do? Go directly to eBay.
Yep.
And I was like, these have to be running if she wins, because that's going to be the most eyes within the certain amount of time. So I had to strike and loaded it all up, ran it for 7 days. I also a firm believer of starting everything at $1 and let it ride, because you're going to get people that are like, well, I'm going to get this for $10. And we all know it will never end at that.
Right.
But you've got that, well, I'm going to get this. And you start bidding wars. And
the other thing that's important about that too is that if you're in this position where you've got a goal and you got to get to that goal, you got to liquidate whatever you can get. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. They think that, well, I'm into this card for this, so I have to get that out. And if you're in this situation, that's just not how you level up or get to that goal that you're wanting.
you just need it, and you
Yeah.
need the cash. And for the most part, I knew I was going to be coming out based on the grades of the cards, that they were certified. I knew I was going to be coming out in the positive for most of them, whether that be a little bit or a lot of bit. Like, I knew I was going to be okay. And I also knew that it wasn't just going to be one or two cards that were going to be able to do this. You've got to start adding it up, because it's the way that it is. Like, you just have to, like you said, you have to get it. And while this is going on, you have talked about it on here, you've talked about it on your other podcasts. Like, this is what you have to do if you're going to do it. Set a goal and do it. And Sasha's modern, Mercedes, whatever you want to call her, like, while she's great and I have a ton of respect, she's still one of my favorite female wrestlers. Like, it's not, I've already said on here, I was an 80s kid. It wasn't Hulkamania Hulk Hogan.
Right.
And I was never able to get Amazing Fantasy. I was never able to get a Mickey Mantle rookie card or anything like that. This was attainable. I had to make moves, and I had to make moves fast, and then I could do this and finally get that. And I did, and I don't regret it. I was, I don't want to say shaking when I got it, but I was just like,
all that work, all those hours, all that time
yeah.
put into it, and there you go.
And I never, if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have never told you that I was going to do that, because like I said, I had ring sides, I had the tie dyes, I had her color blast. Like, I had some big things for her, and it's like, I worked hard to get my Sasha collection, and I've got it. Like, I didn't want to be the preeminent Sasha collector, but I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I liked. And then when something, I don't want to say new and shiny, but it was obtainable, and it's like, well, how am I going to get there? Because it's not, I don't have to chop a leg off, chop an arm off, rob Peter to pay Paul. Like,
Right.
the finish line is here. What am I going to do to get it? And I did. And I've got the Wrestling All-Star Hogan. The funny thing about it is, you and I've even talked about this, and I've caught some heat on Twitter. Like, in the 80s and 90s, like, I originally saw these Wrestling All-Star cards essentially like the Post serial cards. They weren't an official licensed card from Topps, Donruss, Fleer.
Right.
They were made by a magazine. I've heard Jim Cornette talk about it, and how the photographer, where all the photography came from. And I was never a big fan, because I didn't think that they were real.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, but the thing is, the collectors change that. The people like the David Pecks that have got PSA to notify, like, people have done work to get this, and I can't change what the market does, but I can say, the market chose the 89 Upper Deck Griffey. The market has chosen all of these other things, and that's the card to have. And that is, like, when you look at wrestling cards, that Wrestling All-Stars Hogan is the card, essentially. And I just, like I said, I went for it. I had I was a Hulkamaniac when I grew up. Can't lie. Like,
right.
Still love Hulk. I met him for the first time at C2E2 about 8 years ago. I was the last person to get a picture with him, went up, and I was like, hey, you were my hero growing up. And I went out and I shook his hand, and he said, bring it in, brother. And he, like, pulled me in and gave me a big bear hug. And, like, I was like 34 at the time. I thought I was 8 years old again. And It was just like, I don't know. It's just happiness and fond memories. And it goes to, like what you said, wrestling collectors put a lot of their collecting to memories. And I have those memories with Hogan. And I wanted to finally do it, and to wrap, not wrap it up, but go back around. I took a couple side roads. The finish line was there. I knew what I had to do, and timing was the time to do it.
So a couple jumping off points that I've got to know. You're one of the very few people that has probably, I'll say, consolidated to a bigger card that's not doing it for the value. A lot of the hobby mainstream talking heads out there in sports cards want to say like, get rid of your low stuff because you want to invest in the super rare stuff that's a higher end. You want that $10,000 card, and you on the other hand are just like, this is what I connect with, and I don't collect with these things anymore. So any thoughts on that aspect? Because again, I think most of the time when this consolidation thing is all about money, and you're like, no, it's not.
It's now, don't get me wrong. The money of those cards helped me get
Right.
an expensive card, but I'm just going to go back to what I said, earlier. It's about fun and about enjoying yourself. I don't want to stress out. Well, you've talked about it. I'm not spending my mortgage money trying to buy prism boxes to make a quick buck. Like, I've got a day job that pays my bills, that allows me to do fun things. All this to me is fun. And like, I wasn't having fun with Sasha. What can I do to reinvest that? Like, well, there's nobody really modern that I want, but Hogan. And it's, is it an expensive card? Absolutely it is. I am going to get it graded just for authenticity, and I never have to put it in a one touch ever again. Right. It's cryonically like
whatever it comes back is what it comes back, and it'll be great.
Exactly. And then, I'm not going to put my kids through college on this. And who knows, in 40 years, the kids may not want dad's old Hulk Hogan card.
Right.
But like,
you may still want it. You may not want to let anyone have it.
Exactly. But it's that collector mentality I had as a kid. It's a rookie card. It's an early Hulk Hogan card. It's the card to have. Like, you would pull Beckett and see all of these cards that were just, that you could never like fathom seeing or having as a kid, a teenager. And I had the chance, and I knew that if I didn't do it now, I'd probably end up regretting it, because like, these things are only going to go up. And I try to be smart with my stuff, because at the end of the day, I'm going to repeat you, it's a piece of cardboard. Is it really like, it's a picture on a piece of, same thing with comics. I love comics. I've collected comics for 40 years as well. And they're pieces of paper with staples. Like, if you collect your joy and what makes you happy, because that's really all that matters at the end of the day. And I sound like Mr. Rogers, but
sometimes we need some more Mr. Rogers in the hobby, and less, Howard Stearns. I'll put it that way.
There you go.
That's a good way to put it. Something else, a couple other things. You had to be flexible to do this, and that's something I've been trying to stress to the wrestling card community, that I'm not going to say that the majority doesn't know, but it seems like we see this, like everybody I know that's a major sports card collector, they know the idea of buying, selling, trading, maybe taking some stuff in that they don't necessarily want because they know they can sell it to this person to then fund that PC card that they need. And I do stuff like that all the time. Here's an example of you doing it where it worked out. Any thoughts on that for anybody out there who's kind of wanting to do something like this and maybe is grasping their collection a little bit too hard to let it go?
I constantly get, I don't want to say constantly, but people will be like, well, why are you starting it out at $1 auction? Well, I just am. Like, right. I'm just going to let it ride. I've always I would rather let something ride for 7 days than get 7 days of, hey, I want to give you $50 because you have it at 100. Like, that just annoys me. Shoot for the stars, and if you miss it, you'll hit them. However, I know it's not an inspirational, but like, if you see something, plan it out. Like, you do have to put some thought into something like this, and don't be afraid to lose a little bit on this, because what you lose on, if you put multiple things up, what you lose on one card, you're gonna more than make up on another card, because there's always going to be 2 to 5 people that are going to want a card, and if they don't bid on this one, those 2 to 5 people that have bigger pockets on this side are going to run this one up just because it's there.
Right.
Like, just like I said, I don't take investment advice from me. Like, I don't do stocks, but like, don't be afraid and go for it. Like I said, I sound like a middle school library poster, but like,
sometimes that's what we need, though.
it. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have my wrestling all-star Hogan had I not taken the gamble. I had a little bit of house money on this, so I had, it was a little bit more in my favor, but it's a story, and I was excited to tell you about it because you and I have talked about, doing things like this or reinvesting or, getting rid of this to pay for this. Like, it's just part of it.
Yeah,
And
nobody wants to do it, but it always comes down to the point where, like I said, there's some Carrying Cross Superfractor pops up, or like the Comic Images Rock auto popped up one day. I had a DM in Instagram. This guy's like, "Hey, I'm willing to do cash and trade. Here's what I want for this," and I was like, "Oh, well, I wasn't expecting this. I got to make it happen."
right,
And you just got to do what you got to do.
and when you do that, you're going to reap the benefits. So just run with it. And we do have a community out there. Granted, there are times where we are all at each other's necks and throats, and there's this, there's that. But David Peck and I didn't have a great Twitter conversation because I wasn't a fan of Wrestling All Stars. But you know what? We had a very respectable conversation about this because I don't know. You just treat people nice, and they will treat. I feel like once, like, the more right now, like, golden rule, like, the more treat people how you want to be treated, and everybody will, for the most part, talk to you about it and help you and guide you along this.
Yeah, there's things that I'll see people collect, and I'm not really interested in it, but I find it intriguing, if that makes any sense. So I'll reach out to them. I'll be like, well, why did you do this? Or, what happened here? And I think a lot of time that gets kind of misconstrued as being negative, where maybe it's actually people just asking questions to try to learn something. And you're a prime example of that. The other thing, speaking of that I want to talk about is you're also one of the first people that I've seen that has kind of said, there's this whole release of all this new stuff coming out, whether it's Panini or Leaf or whatever it is. And you're like, nope, I don't need any of that anymore because I want what I connect with. And that's something that's just, that's completely against the grain from what I've seen lately. It feels like most of the community has been going for that. What have you done for me lately? So what's the latest Panini release? I've got to have all of that. What is the latest release in Japan? I've got to have all of that. Instead of saying, what do I actually connect with? What do I actually want to collect? So what's your thoughts on that? Because again, that's another completely against the grain thing that you've done here.
I don't get me wrong. I love ripping and tearing. Like, I have bought, I bought boxes of Chronicle because I love and hey, you've definitely, hey Zhan, I bought these. What do you want for bulk? Like, so you of anybody know this more, but like, I've now learned to like turn that urge off, and I don't want to say play the long game, but everything is cyclical. Like, yes, there is a huge excitement because the new Prism is about to release, but guess what? Revolution is right around the corner, and then there's going to be Select again. So everything that is right now is going to be, I don't want to say pennies on the dollar, but it's going to be substantially cheaper because the new hotness is going to be out.
Right.
Now, there is going to be those cards that the golds, the out of 10s, the ones that you got to jump on when you got to jump on.
My rule on that is anything that you think you need that's numbered to 10 or less, no matter what the parallel is, if you see it, you got to make it happen.
Exactly. But it's just, I find myself, because I have 2 young kids, they go to bed around 8 o'clock. And so at night before I go to bed, I'm on my phone and I'm scrolling eBay and I'm just seeing what the pictures are on the card. And it's like, I like that. I'm not the biggest Lacey Evans fan, but when I saw her optic card and she's saluting, and it was like, well, that's cool. And I saw the regular one, and then I saw a blue one. I was like, well, that silver is kind of white, and then there was a red, and it's like, that's just fun. And that, I'll always remember that as the Yanasties collection of Lacey Evans. And it's just, like I said, I don't know. I'm just in it for fun. There's no, at the end of the day, there's no taking it, and I don't know. Like I gotta stop feeling like Mr. Rogers here, but they're cards. You're supposed to look at them. You're supposed to like them. Just have fun and go with it, because there's so much negativity on wrestling in the world, on politics and economics.
Yeah.
You've got to just find something. And if you get a smile from a wrestling card, dude, go with it and do it again and do it again. Whether you think that diva's pretty or you think that wrestler looks great doing the arcade,
Whether it's a base card or whether it's a 1 of 1.
Exactly.
Yep. All right, so where do we go now? You got the Hogan, you've liquidated Sasha. What's your next thing? Like, I know you said you're grading the Hogan, or is that kind of the focus right now, or do you have something else you're going to try to start going after? Is there a new set or project that you're trying to curate? What's next?
I am going to grade Hogan. That is, I didn't send it off because I did want to show. He's right here. He's got.
Just from looking at it, it's a pretty clean looking copy. It looks fairly centered, and yeah.
It's got a couple soft corners, but like it was in a cellophane pack. Like it's not,
right.
It's going to have a soft corner here or there. Like that's just, I mean, it's a 40-year-old card now. Like,
right.
I'm really enjoying the Stardom and the BBM stuff. These girls on the True Heart, the Joshi wrestlers, will just go above and beyond for their autographs. And because some of these girls aren't in Stardom or in IWGP, you can get an amazing autograph card for less than $10. And I don't know what they're writing, but I know that it looks cool. And
right.
that's, there was a new girl that I started collecting. Her name is Madeline, and she was like an MMA fighter slash wrestler, but it popped up on my Twitter feed one night where a video of her signing all of her BBMs, and I was like, this is amazing. So like I've started looking at those, and what is fun, I will always, anything new with Julia, Mina Shirakawa, they're my two favorite in Stardom, and they don't get a lot of cards, but they get some random things, like they have an acrylic card, like a keychain here and there, just fun stuff that, you can get together. And then I'll always look for these fun color matches or fun cards that just look cool. Like, that I saw the product sheet for Prism, and that Hollywood Hogan retail Prism that's kind of black and white, kind of gray.
Right.
Like, that's kind of cool. Now, am I going to spend, $100? No, but I'm going to keep looking for it. I'm going to play the long game.
Right.
And
it's going to drop as long as it's not one of those, which, if you're sticking to base cards or a color match, I would say your luck is pretty good that you're not going to have to pay a ton for something that you see as cool.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I'm not trying to go for the color blasts or the 1-of-1s or anything like that, but it's just like, that's a cool image. Okay. What are, most of the refractors that I get are less than $2.99 anyway. Like it,
right.
Maybe a cracked ice or a retail or something like that. Like it doesn't break the bank. Like, and I'm always excited to see who they add. So, this year is Hollywood Hogan.
Right.
Cody gets his first Prism. Some of the up and comers, like, Nikita Lyons is getting her first Prism. So there's always that like cool new thing, but it's a base card. Like Solo last year, I never would have thought Solo would be beating Gable Steveson for like a year ago. Gable Steveson was the be all end all, and everyone's like, Solo, is it Sequoia, what, like who, like, and now because of the bloodline, Solo it is, I would say arguably one of the top Prism rookies of last year, and he was a sleeper
Right.
on the release. So
that's usually how that goes, I think.
right, poor Gable Steveson is a Greg Jeffries. We'll throw that back to the
Oh,
beginning.
good comparison. Good comparison.
Or a Brian Taylor, if anybody remembers Brian Taylor.
All right, so what's your kind of parting? You've given a lot of Mr. Rogers quotes and inspirational posters and high school quotes. What's something else that, as we kind of close out the show here, something that's worked for you, any kind of words of encouragement, anything you have for the wrestling card community out there?
Don't hesitate to reach out and talk to people. Networking. I've talked to Zhan. I've talked to Tony. I talked to my buddy David from across the pond, from the Squared Circle, Relic podcast, where they have stuff that pops up over there that I can't get here.
Right.
Networking. And I don't want to say don't put yourself out there, because you said at the beginning of this, like, I don't put myself out there a lot, but I do know how to make connections. And
right.
Because that's going to help you out, because they're going to be, hey, I saw this, and you're going to get a message one day of, you need this? Yeah, that'd be awesome. Like, and then, I'm going to go with what you said, unless it's like a 10 or under and you got to make it happen, but don't be afraid to play the long game, because it will always end up paying off, because it's going to show back up. And then what happens is, once it shows back up once and it gets a little bit higher than a previous sale, 3 more are going to load. And so it's very cyclical. So,
and then when the new product comes out, like you said, the other one goes down. So
exactly. So don't be afraid to play the long game, because you will, it'll always go to your benefit. And like we just talked about with Steveson and Sokoa, like that, like I said, that's a crazy analogy, but it's the facts right now.
Right. Well, Travis, thanks for the discussion. I hope it helped a lot of collectors out there, and it's fun to kind of listen to a person's story of how things transpire and what goes on. So let everybody know where they can find you. Anything else you got going on that you want to talk about?
I'm on Twitter, tfowler1, Instagram. I think it's the same thing. I make some posts every now and then. So if you see one of Zhan or Tony's posts, probably will comment underneath it. You'll see me there. Check out some of the other card community podcasts, the Card Foundation podcast. They're great. The Squared Circle Relic podcast from across the pond. With all content is good content. It's like publicity. Good publicity and bad publicity is still publicity.
If it's people talking about wrestling cards, it's good in my book.
Exactly. And just have fun. If you're a super collector, God bless you. More power to you, because you've got some amazing stuff, and I've got mad respect. But also don't be afraid to take a step back and look at that and go, hey, you know what? I remember that Mega Powers match from Saturday night's main event when Hogan and dropped a buck or two for a Revolution Mega Powers card, because you're going to look at it and you're going to smile and enjoy it.
That's what it's all about. Thank you for your time today, and thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing story. Thanks again to Travis Fowler for coming on the channel today and giving us his time to talk about how he was able to achieve this Grail, and maybe it helped you, the viewers. Maybe it helped you with setting goals. Maybe it helped you for, okay, now you watch this video, you're going after that Grail card that you've always wanted now, no matter what that is. If you did enjoy this video, let Travis know. I've posted links in the show notes to his social platforms. Go give him a follow, send him a DM, let him know how much you appreciate his time on the Wrestling with Cards channel. And while you're checking the links to the show notes, don't forget to check out all the other ways that you can help show your support for all of my content. Links to my social platforms, the eBay store, Patreon, the podcasts, which don't forget, if you would like to help be a part of wrestling card history, make sure to check out the Wrestling with Cards podcast episode called I Need Your Help with Iconic Wrestling Cards. I will be taking these submissions, your submissions to me, through the end of April, so we're running out of time. You better listen and get those in now if you want your opinions heard. I appreciate your time, taking the time out of your busy schedule to hear what me and Travis have to say and to just hear general wrestling card conversation. But until the next video drops, click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content. See you there.